We live, we live.
Oh,
Oh, hey
all right, there we
guys.
go.
I expected an introduction.
Yeah,
Actually.
Oh yeah, shit! I didn't
What's
click the
going on?
introduction.
I was just
Okay,
scrolling
okay, we
Twitter.
gotta.
Hello, hi coconuts. Sorry for the
I
a bit of
forgot.
an
I
error
forgot.
right at the
Okay,
start.
sorry. I didn't click. I didn't click it. It's been too long. Yes, yes.
Yes. We've been out for a week. We apologize for that because some old school guy over here doesn't know how to work a couple of softwares. Looks like it's quite evident from today as well.
Hello. Hey, don't flame me, yeah. But
Yes.
yes. I'm
What's
trying to
up,
work on the
Reggie?
software game. Yes.
His mind is elsewhere. His mind is elsewhere. Awesome, guys. Here again. Thanks for joining us. 8 o'clock as usual on Tuesdays. A couple of shout outs today. We're going to be talking quite a number of things. I think Tesla is on the board there, Trip.com, Xiaomi. We also talk a little bit about the gambling companies or the online betting companies that want to purchase other companies, DraftKings, for example. One of the big ones we want to first start off with is Squid Game, right? And CS is going to take us through it. But just before CS gets started, right, don't forget to follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitch. We have a comment section right now, so please go ahead. We are talking about Squid Game and how it's created sort of a viral effect. And we've got some numbers for you with regards to Netflix, and we can talk about Netflix there. So please go ahead and leave any comments, and we can answer that immediately. All right. Thanks, folks. CS, on to you.
Alrighty. So, Squid Games. I guess before I brought this up, have any of you actually heard of it?
Squid Game, yes, I've heard of it.
I've seen the viral video. I've seen some of those things, and I'm like, what the hell is this thing? It looks so scary. Sorry, I thought it was horror, so I didn't look at it yet. Boomer, okay, boomer.
Evidently, there, Reggie. No, I haven't watched it myself, but I know it's creating, massive viralness. I guess if that's a word in Singapore as well as other countries. But maybe tell us more. Yeah.
Yeah. So I actually didn't know much about Squid Games either. I heard about it like here and there. A lot of people are like, "Oh, you got to ride this media wave." I'm just like, I have no idea what's happening, right? But then earlier today, I saw an article by Barron's, and they were saying that Squid Game has overtaken like at the most watched series on Netflix, right? And before that, it was and before that, it was Lupin, right? And for me, I really enjoyed watching Lupin. So I was like, oh, maybe I should check out Squid Game. So I, spent an hour or two earlier today watching a few episodes, just trying to understand what exactly this is about. And I guess the way, if I were to explain it to you right now, I would describe it as think about these like adults playing children games, right? So a very common children game, I think, that transcends all cultures is the whole red light, green light, right? So the idea there is like you have someone who's playing the cop and they're not looking, and then you're supposed to like slowly sneak, your way across some sort of field, and then once they look, you're supposed to like stop moving, right? So essentially, games very similar to that, but the consequences of being caught is that they kill you, right? So they just eliminate you overall. Right. And yeah, from there, like the whole premise is if you can make it through all these this set of games, you would essentially win a bunch of money. I think the up to where I saw it was about $45 billion, or sorry, 45 billion won, which is about $28 million US dollars, right? And the reason why, or the how they found all these participants is that all of these people are like, they owe a lot of money to loan sharks, right? So they're essentially going after people who are, who are desperate, like last chance of survival type of thing. And then they're approaching them saying, hey, we can be your savior if you are interested in playing this game, right? So I mean, I'm not going to get into the game anymore. But what I found really interesting when I found out that Netflix, or its number one series on Netflix, is number one, like how much did it cost to make the game, or the show, and then number two, how much do we think it's grown Netflix's user base, or it was like the show that kept people for another month, right? Because I think the last few sessions that we did, Reggie talked a lot about Disney, right? And how Disney's franchise, like all the IP is able to bring in multi-billion dollars, right? So I'm curious on your take. So I guess let's facts that I am aware of at this moment. So it's estimated that Squid Games cost about 17 million US dollars to create. There are about 9 episodes, right? So that's about, we'll just call that 2 million. Yeah, we'll call that 2 million US dollars per episode. And from what I've been able to find on the internet, they are looking to create a season 2 now, right? But off to you guys. What do you think about the economics of Netflix from that perspective?
So cheap. Honestly, it's one of the cheapest shows out there that Netflix ever produced, and went so huge. But sorry, I'm a Kim's Convenience fan, right? So just want to reiterate my love for Canadian Asian comedy, and how Simon Liu is just Zhang. Okay, but anyway, I don't watch Netflix that much, but I do know like how much they're spending hundreds of millions of dollars just for one series, right? And for something like that, at this price range, it's pretty well, right? So in other words, it is showing something. It's showing that with all the consumption data that Netflix has, they actually can give you a lot of guidelines as to like what will work, what is interesting, what is the tick rate, how do you increase your hit rate, right? And if this is the first one that they can create at such a low production cost, what about the next one and next one? So if they can continue to do this a few more rounds, then hey, this is that means there's a system here, right? So we don't want to kind of tick on something as a one-off situation and go gaga around it. But hey, at 17 million for 8 episodes, it's very cheap, and I want to see them repeat the system. And it's also proving that K-pop works. Yeah, Korean drama is actually going international. So yeah, next one is Thai pop. Yeah, that's my belief. But anyway, yes.
I have never saw any Thai pop before, so I can't make a comment there.
It's coming. Yes.
Jeez, I mean, on my side, I think this has proven a formula for them, right? So actually, I've been reading Netflix, the No Rules, and the CEO talks about it there, about how he focused on content and all these things. And I think, firstly, that's their main bet, right? Building that sort of content and really moving forward. And we can see this actually throughout, right? I think first it started with the House of Cards, if I'm not mistaken. Then they started to move towards the movies. I think with the one with Will Smith, and I'm not too sure, but we saw this this aspect of cross culture showing and cross culture views, right? I guess it started with Money Heist or La Casa de Papel, which became, I think, the most viewership at that point in time. I think Stranger Things, he mentioned in his book, Reed Hastings, as another big bet that he did that also did cross culture. Lupin being that one as well. I didn't know they were there. I didn't know they were the most viewed until Squid Game. But I think this is proven to be something that works, and I believe is their secret sauce to keeping number one, retention high, and at the same time acquiring some new customers. I didn't expect it to be this low with regards to production costs. I guess they were just testing it out. And maybe a bit like Lupin, right? The first season was also quite maybe low budget, and the second season was a lot more. We might be seeing that with Squid Game as well. Or is it the fact that because COVID cases are rising globally, that everybody's just turning on to Netflix and just watching it now? Right?
I don't think so. I think everybody is going out already. Although all the cases are coming up, a lot of people in the West have already moved on with their lives, right? So I don't think so. But thanks for reminding me all the old shows like Money Heist, Stranger
Yeah.
Things. I was like, oh yeah, those were all like pretty big hits at that point in time. And Netflix has this amazingness, right, of being able to create nothing from like something from nothing. So they usually sign an options to produce for 3 seasons. All right, so the first 3 seasons will always be cheap for them, and then the production house will come in and say, oh, we need to renegotiate everything, and then the prices, cost of production will rise like crazy for next 3 seasons and the next 3 seasons, and eventually it becomes like not as sexy, not as effective, and they will drop the content, right? So I think that's still a big part of what Netflix finds challenging, which is why I will want to see more of that whole like game and multi-channel monetization going forward, right? And not so much just this whole like, yeah, continue, but at least it's proven that their hit rate for content is very, very good.
Yeah, it's there. Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
So, I was Googling a few of these shows when we were just talking there. So House of Cards, it's projected to have cost about 5 million per episode,
Five
right?
million,
And,
right?
and Stranger Things was 12 million. So, I
Episode.
mean,
Wow.
yeah, relative to these other, these two shows, yeah, I mean, Netflix definitely got a huge steal there.
Definitely.
Yeah. And I think there are a lot of at least within the region, I do know some people that are producing content, for Netflix. And there are a lot of discussion about how Netflix is flexing its reach and flexing its brand to get cheaper cost, right? So that is something to do with skill. There's something to do with their hustling power. And yeah, for them it's great. For everyone else, monopoly, it's always a slight problem for other people in the sector. So yeah, all that jazz, we have reaffirmed the idea that Netflix, it's very successful in creating new content. And actually, if you think about it, I would think it's a little bit unfair to even say that they're not creating new genres, right? So it always feels like they're creating something new altogether. Like it's not like new, like totally out of nowhere, but it's like they're always pushing the ground. Stranger Things, Orange is the New Black, Money Heist. Even with this, I'm like, who the hell would think of creating a show like this? All right, so hey, pretty kudos to them. Good stuff.
Cool. I think that was good. I think, to quickly sum up, you talked about creating good content, start off with creating these new genres, but sustainability, I guess, is the next question, right? After the first 3 seasons, what's going to happen next? Will they effectively move on to a bigger, will the production house then say, okay, this is what's going to cost you, otherwise I'm going to say Disney,
Of course, it
or I'm
always
going
happens.
to
Always
Amazon,
happens.
right? Yeah.
Always happens, and then they'll create new shows and new shows and
Yeah.
new shows. Yeah.
Actually, speaking about production houses, I also found out that the production house that created Squid Games, I think it's publicly traded, and it's gone up 70% the last 3 trading days. 70.
Wow.
Dude.
So yes,
Crazy.
people are pricing in that already.
That's some good money.
Yeah. The Korean stock market is filled with entertainment stocks. By the way, for all of you that don't know, you can actually buy all your big bands. Your SNSD, your I don't know who else is there, like BTS. I think you
BTS.
can buy BTS. You can actually invest in these guys. All the companies, they own them, and they're all traded. All the entertainment, almost all of them, are traded in the Korean stock market, right? So, but they are very volatile, by the way. So you can kind of see these companies. For all of you that never bought never bought celebrity management companies or like celebrity creation companies, you can kind of see them as the old game companies. In the past, when game companies, they will have overnight success. They create this like Warcraft, or they create something like out of nowhere, and then suddenly they become super successful. They will do a few seasons, and then they kind of cycle downward, and you're not sure will they be able to hit the next round. So I think the cyclicality of the old gaming kind of games is very similar to how you should evaluate celebrity, at least for some of these Korean celebrity companies today. So yeah, that is one way to go about doing it. Cool.
Awesome. All right. Thanks for that, Sid. I think that was a great opener. Reggie, on to you next.
How am I gonna bid that opener, right? Like Squid Game, guys. Right. And today I have something. Today I'm not the most exciting one of the three of you. I'm gonna focus on China, right? So China is the talk of the town, and I've already done an episode about Evergrande on our main feed. So if you have not checked it out, you should definitely check it out. I put out my position. Of course, later we'll talk a little bit more about this position because someone with a bigger name is taking a different position, and I'm getting a little bit jittery of how my thesis will age. But for my segment, I'm going to focus on Xiaomi. So China's Xiaomi invests 2 billion in auto chip company Black Sesame. I'm pretty sure it's nothing to do with the name, okay? It's not Xiaomi, Black Sesame, and then Green Bean, none of those things. But this is a company that is still relatively startup-y, right? They have just gone through a Series C round of investment. So everything is very private. There's not a lot of information out there, but they are focusing on essentially the automobile, the smart future data, all that jazz of mobile chips, right? So I don't know how to put it better, but generally that's the idea, right? So they're going to AI-powered automobile vehicles, and Xiaomi wants to be in the space aligned with the Chinese government and their whole combat against Intel, against all the American companies. And yeah, this is what China is doing, and the power of China when it says that, yeah, this is what we want to do. You see all these of its companies align their strategy and invest into all these companies. So that is very interesting observation. What are you guys thinking?
Yeah, so Black Sesame is a Chinese automotive semiconductor company. So effectively, they make chips for cars. Would you say that?
Yeah.
Well, well, right now there is a chip shortage, right? So, I mean,
I would say they're not there yet. I would say they're still in like the proof of product, proof of concept kind of situation.
Okay.
Okay. Not that it's like totally empty, but there's no numbers or like how much are we producing, how much are we acquiring. So I think in Series C, a lot of deep tech companies somewhere around Series C is when they go into the big production, right? So trying to scale up their production line and make it a viable model, right? So Series A, Series B will be a lot of investment refining the tech. So at this point in time, I would still think that they're relatively young. Yeah, but yeah, you definitely are on point. There's a big chip lag.
There is a big chip lag, and Xiaomi has the scale to probably scale this Black Sesame company all the way through, and the funding with it, right? If it's not a 100% acquisition, it's probably a massive investment. And I think it's a good area to go into, given how many people are moving towards these automotive and smart cars, if you will, if you want to call it that. China is another big one, and I think they have also aligned on that. We've got other companies doing it, so I think it's great that Xiaomi wants to be at the forefront of technology, as we've seen with all their OEM products, and from phones to vacuum cleaners to robo vacuums
to your table,
TVs to literally my table. Yes.
Oh, what?
Yeah. So I've got a standing.
You have a smart
yeah.
table? Oh, okay.
No, I've got a standing table that you can, sort of push up and push down, and it cost me $200, so I don't need to pay $1,000 for OmniDesk, for example.
Yeah.
But
Why did I not get that?
Notice, no, not sponsored by Xiaomi, but happy to be sponsored by Xiaomi. Just saying. Yeah, continue.
So I think they're putting their hands into these things, and I think it's a good area, specifically in this sort of automotive semiconductor industry. I think it's a good next step for them. CS.
Yeah. I was just looking at this, the article, and it seems like essentially it's investing in Black Sesame at a $2 billion valuation, and yeah, it's a few hundred million, right? So I would say maybe probably 20% or so of the company, given typical valuation structures. I actually, for a company that big, I feel like investing in a company that's only $2 billion isn't that big, right? I think it's for Xiaomi, it's like really, hey, let's just throw some money, not throw some money, but it's not going to make or break their company or anything, right? It's probably one of the many things that they're exploring. So I mean that's what I think about it right now. I'll definitely need to learn a bit more about Black Sesame to kind of really understand what exactly is this supposed to be about.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. You should learn about red bean and black bean and green bean also. Like
Yeah.
I think that they're building like they're going down that path, But I think you got that right. For a lot of these big tech companies, after they have their money, they have the whole like flywheel and the big giant cash cow. They want to reinvest into other spaces or invest into verticals that will be relevant to them. So I think Xiaomi is not yet in the brain space of Chinese capital markets, right? So a lot of most of the investments in China come from Tencent, come from Alibaba. JD is doing a little bit of that, but yeah, it's actually very hard to compete with deals, in the capital space in the whole startup kind of growth trajectory, especially in China, because essentially, if you are invested in Tencent, you have a true train into the whole ecosystem, right? Same with Alibaba. So companies like Xiaomi, company like Huawei, company like JD, they are struggling to even get a lot of investments going. But after a few rounds of successful investments, you will see them structure to Xiaomi Capital, or some sort of thing, and that will be a whole investment arm of their own. But I would say that don't be too hyped up about it. And I brought it up because I specifically want to let everybody know that a lot of companies say they want to go into microchip. A lot of companies say they want to go into semiconductors. And look at how many companies have successfully done it in the recent years, right? AMD, Intel, Nvidia. But Intel is the old guy, right? So AMD and Nvidia are probably the only ones. And of course, recently, Apple, right? Apple M1 chip. Everyone else has just kind of come and gone, and they've not really done it, right? So it's Black Sesame wouldn't be the first one, and I brought it up because I don't want everybody to be overhyped about it. But I also want to take this opportunity to take a look at the reality that when the Chinese government say that, oh, okay, we're gonna do this, all the companies will go along with it, right? And definitely, like what Rakesh has pointed out, there is a chip shortage. So for whatever reason, whether it's a supply chain or what have you, it's always good to see some of this more investment into this hardware development, especially in China alone. So yeah, great stuff.
Awesome. Good one for there. All right, next on. I think sticking on the semiconductor, or rather automotive industry, I want to talk a little bit about Tesla, right? So Elon Musk mentioned that they're looking to manufacture about 300,000 cars from January to September next year in Shanghai or in China, right? And I think it's a movement from the US to I think they're currently manufacturing in California, if I'm not mistaken. And they're trying to move that to China. And of course, one of the biggest things that Tesla is currently facing is the chip shortage, automotive chip shortage, where he believes it to be settled by the end of the year. That's what Elon Musk is saying. I mean, we don't know.
I don't believe in manufacturing numbers from him. Just saying that I don't trust him when it comes to manufacturing.
Agreed. I mean, he has always been fighting the board with regards to the numbers that he has forecasted, right? And of course, at the same time, he's got a cult following, so I guess the stock market is still just following him on what he says. But what do you guys think of him moving to China with regards to setting up this manufacturing plant? What do you think it's for? Is it cost?
I think
So
yeah, go ahead. Yes.
yeah. So Tesla already has a Gigafactory in China, right? In Shanghai. And from what I just Googled here, this Shanghai Gigafactory, it was designed to make 500,000 cars per year. So, I mean, given that the factory was completed, and if this number is actually true, then I think, Elon Musk saying 300,000 within a 9-month period, it's in the realm of feasibility from a battery perspective, right? I think he's made bigger claims about a lot of other stuff from a realm possibility side of things, right? So yeah, so from that perspective, I guess at this point I believe him. I believe it's possible. The question really is going to be, will they actually be able to really pull it off? I don't really follow Tesla too closely, so I don't know, how many have they actually produced this year, right? In the last 9 months, how many did they produce? And yeah, if we were to extrapolate it out, what type of growth rate do they need to see in order to hit this goal that they're talking about?
Yeah. Okay, I can see ground on that. He has made crazier claims. it does sound like this is
That's true.
within the realm of possibility. Yes, Rakesh, you have something to say?
So yeah, for example, in the first 8 months in the factory, they did 240,000 cars, right? Or rather, the vehicles were shipped. So we're looking at probably a 30% increase of cars in terms of manufacturing. I think that the question here as well is there is that current chip shortage, so the car cannot be made without this chip. And we have seen even Honda, right, in Japan, as saying that we have a 40 to 50% chip shortage. And we're looking for that to increase and hopefully, a decrease 70% by the end of year. Or I think it was November that they were saying, right? So if that's the case, are we actually looking, given the fact that there wasn't the shortage is upcoming and could be worse, given that they did 240,000 cars in 8 months, a 40% or 30% increase on that, is that really sustainable?
Yeah, so I don't think it's about sustainability. It's really about growth and being strategic at this point in time, right? They are growing and they're trying to sell more cars and they're trying to optimize their supply chain. So, sustainability, yeah, I don't think it's within the discussion for this particular situation here. But I would say that if you look at the global market, you look at the global supply chain, China has the most efficient global supply chain, right? With this one, we cannot lie to ourselves, right? And they have
Absolutely.
end-to-end resources. They have the rare earth metals, all the way to producing very low level chips. Yeah, it's not wrong that at this point in time, China is still producing like what 9 nanometer or like 7 nanometer or like what 12 nanometer. Some of the bigger chips and if you look at who is producing the 3 nanometer 5 nanometer, it's in Taiwan, it's in Samsung with Korea, and I think Intel is doing 5 nanometer. Like, so a lot of the chips are still a lot more backward in China. So that is one big part about China's problem. But if you think about it, if the global supply chain challenge, I think China is going to win out on the global supply chain, right? Just because they have an end-to-end situation. The whole world has globalized, right, and shift their supply chain. Where do they shift their supply chain to? They shifted all their supply chain or big parts of their supply chain to China, right? So, and China rightfully pointed out that, hey, this is a strategic challenge that we are facing. And yeah, Black Sesame is doing it, Xiaomi is investing in it, and you'll see a lot more investment into developing that. But all that being said, it's not going to be an overnight thing. 3 year, 5 year, 10 year development. It's not like now, or whatever right? But I would say that if you understand the global chip supply chain, Taiwan and Korea is where a lot of the chips are coming from. Right, so I did a geek out with searching on ASML, and it's on the Stock Geek Out feed. So you should check it out and listen. What is inside? What do we talk about? So we vividly recognize that most of the chips are coming out of Asia. Right, so why don't you want to be here, right? Whether you're Tesla or not, you want to put your supply chain here. You want to have that kind of power to negotiate. And I think the Chinese government has the power to negotiate with its neighbors, although there's this tension with Taiwan, what have you. But hey, I can pay you a premium. I need the numbers, give it to me, right? So I make it sound like I'm part of the Chinese government, right? I'm not yet, but anyway, so
Yeah, is it?
yes. So maybe you can look out for me, okay? Anyway, but but yes, I think the idea here is China is very optimized with supply chain. They have a kink here, but whether Tesla is doing a short-term repositioning of its supply chain or whether it's like a longer-term strategic situation, either way, I think it's a good decision, right?
Cool. Awesome, guys. Thanks so much. All right. Next topic. CS. What are we on?
All right. So speaking of Tesla, so this famous investor has an open short position. So I think he first started shorting Tesla in December 2020. In May 2021, he bought about $800,000 worth, 800,000 shares worth of exposure through options, so put options. And I mean, we'll eventually see how that plays out, right? So this person is Michael Burry. He was the one who famously profited off the mortgage crisis, right? Or the credit default swaps in the whole mortgage crisis scenario back in 2008 in the US. And he is also now, or supposedly, he also made a few comments on Twitter, disclosing he has some sort of short interest in Evergrande. So yes, topic here is Evergrande. I don't know. I mean, where do we want to begin on this conversation?
I just want to put it out there that I have put out my positions and I put out my thoughts. Okay, I don't own Evergrande, but I've done it, and I put it on our main feed called the Ninja Coconut. So you should check it out if you have not. I don't know how you end up in Geek Out without checking out the main feed. But if you're somehow here and you're not in the main feed, please go listen to the main feed. And I just hope that my thesis age well over time. And I don't want to be on the other side of Michael Burry. Sorry to say, not all investment guys are always right and not always like they're there. But Michael Burry is one of those people that does not always come up with investment theses. So he's not like Citron. It's not like, who's the other guy? The guy that runs Pershing Square.
Bill Ackman.
Bill Ackman, Carl Icahn. They're throwing out theses every week. It's like always has theses. But Michael Burry has a few, right? And one is that credit default swaps. One is options on water, which he did after the credit default swaps. And now he comes out and say that, this is a big bubble, which I get it. Although in my discussion, I did say that I don't think it will blow up. I think the government will really try very, very hard to hold it back. And I think the government does have the ability to hold it back. But I cannot deny that the property bubble is a very big bubble. I've lived there, I've traveled around, and I have physically seen those kind of areas where they're just like, what the hell is going on here? All right. So it's like big empty apartments, like a whole estate, I wouldn't even call it estate, like a whole town, a whole city that has nothing much going on. So all these phantom apartments and phantom property buildings, it's true. And it's there, right? And it's taking up a lot of debt, both in the consumers and both in the corporate debt structure, right? So you see a lot of that happening. But I would say that the Chinese government is ready for it. They have already signaled this in 2017, right? So if you want to talk about how aware and how conscious the Chinese government is, they're definitely more aware than when the US went for a crash, right? So this is definitely a good thing for them. At least they're aware, they know what they're trying to do. And I've heard a lot of pundits in China speaking in Mandarin, talking about how they're going to solve some of these problems. And because the debt is denominated in RMB, we cannot lie to ourselves, because the debts are denominated in RMB, they have the full ability to essentially kind of squeeze out the debt and pump in new liquidity. Some people will get hurt, the market will shake. It's not going to be a cruise. There'll be a lot of problems, but I don't think it'll be as bad. But I really hope whatever I said age well, because it's Michael Burry, right, guys?
Yeah, it is. Well, whatever you said is out now, out in the open and out in the world. I guess we'll look back and review that in about 3 to 6 months, depending on what we're gonna see.
Yes. Please be opportunistic, but not overly capitalized. Okay, like you can always be opportunistic as an individual. Okay, but I still have to say it's not recommendation. Please do not take it as a recommendation. It's solely for education purposes only. But I'm opportunistic, so I am definitely looking at some of the interesting stuff. But I will say, like, you still gotta manage, the size of your portfolio, size of your bets, and all that jazz.
Yeah. So sorry, Rakesh.
I
just want to
continue. Yes.
Just want to give out our friends at Brand News who initially brought this to my attention. I don't want to talk too much more about what they wrote in there. Definitely check it out if you're interested. But I think what made headlines, or the initial headlines, was Bill Ackman essentially pointing to someone's Twitter profile. So this is I think I would say it's a relatively small profile. It's not like a well-known person. It seems like it's a pretty much anonymous account. And this is essentially, he initially, made it called this account out back in late July, and as in I'll just read exactly what Burry supposedly tweeted. So he said, note to date, this is why if you want to be informed or to be cool, you should read every single thread on Evergrande/China/Contagion the last few months by, at the last bear the last bear standing, right? Or the last bear stand one, or what have you, right? So I went through the guy's profile, checked out a few of his tweets, a lot of information, haven't actually read it all. But one of the things that I found interesting that was mentioned is that in August 2021, China's residential property slowed down quite significantly. Home sale values dropped 20%, and it's continuing to escalate. Right, and this is like back in August. So, as someone who's been in the market before, as someone who's buying a property, you're typically putting down some sort of deposit, right? And usually that deposit's, depending on where you live, it could be anywhere from like 5% to 30%, right? So if your property value started dropped 20%, essentially, in a sense, like your deposit just got wiped out. And I think that was one of the challenges with, with the U.S. Side of things, right? When people were living in property values or in properties, or if they had properties that were costing more from a loan perspective than the actual property value after the implosion, right? So I think that from that perspective, I'm very curious to see what will happen, with the market and how all these people are like who've taken out all these different loans would essentially view, how would they act, right? Will they act similar to the U.S. where they just started walking away and just letting it default? Which then became, a cascading issue, or will the Chinese government somehow be able to like step in and limit that exposure?
Mm-hmm. I think it's important to look back at history and realize that the Chinese government is not the only one that is facing such a challenge, or has faced such a challenge. You see that in the early days of Korea trying to develop, all your property crashes and all that, literally the whole property coming down. Yeah, I know some people are seeing viral videos of like, China anyhow built property, but actually Korea went through that same shit. Singapore went through that same thing. Japan went through that same thing, where when the market is overcapitalized and or trying very hard to grow in a short period of time, people cut corners and there's not enough legislation, not enough regulation around a lot of things. So, and it just becomes a bubble, right? So at this point in time, I definitely agree that it is a bubble. My fundamental divergence is that there is no complicated derivative situation, or at least there's no complicated derivative situation relative to what was happening in the 08 mortgage crisis, right? So we will see. But I just want to put it out there that I don't think you will see a lot of Chinese people sleeping on the streets. Okay, don't worry about that. A lot of them will go back to their hometown, right? And if you want to learn more about that, really, 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 you must understand the revolution and the kind of land reform that went through during China's rise to where it is today, right? So there was an early day when there was a lot of problems and they were going through revolution. And during the period of revolution, the people actually got back their land. So it's very different from the situation in the US, where there were a few major landowners and there were a lot of slaves. And when you liberalize, you allow the slaves to go out, they don't own land. So they have to concentrate in the city where jobs are, right? So or they have to go to wherever jobs are, and they don't actually have whatever, equity in the physical land itself, and they don't have homes, in rural parts of the country. Where in China, because of the revolution, a lot of people own land. Okay, I don't be surprised that some of them have already sold it and all that over the process of capitalization. But a lot of the rural guys, they have equity in the physical land, right? So they can go back. They're very big houses back in their hometown, and that's the interesting part. That's structurally different from the US, right? So that is very interesting things. Please check out our episode. Yeah, see ya.
Yeah, no, I think that's fair. Exactly. So I think the culture is very, very different. Let's see. It's definitely going to be volatile. I think for me, it's just seeing where it's going to go, how it's going to affect the U.S. market or any other market for that matter, because confidence is a major, major factor. And given what China is doing with cryptocurrency, is money going to flow from there to crypto? Or is crypto effectively going back? Right. That's an additional variable that we don't necessarily have to talk about now, but it's also something just to say, okay, moving towards quite a volatile area, quite a volatile time. And we just need to see as the news comes along.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Thanks for that. Yes. Right, now that you're on mute, we'll move along to Reg.
Yeah, so
Next
following
point.
following the threat of China, today both my companies are in China. Of course, I've been looking at a lot of Chinese companies. As you know, with any other people that really wants to be serious in the markets, whenever there's blood on the streets, that is where you start working and try to look at what's going on, right? So, of course, don't be in a rush. Take your time to kind of learn. There'll always be blood on the streets when the market is overcapitalized and the market changes and there's cycles and whatever you, right? But today I want to focus on one of the companies that I've been talking a little bit more about, called Trip.com, right? So for all of you that don't know Trip.com, they own Skyscanner, they own Trip.com, they own Xiecheng, they own Qunar, some of the biggest Chinese travel platforms and apps, right? So Skyscanner and Trip.com, they're not in China. Skyscanner, I think it's in Belgium, or they started in the UK, something like that. So it's part of their acquisition process that allowed them to come out. So I already recorded an episode, it's coming out, right? So stay tuned for that. But yeah, focusing on the company, I think what is interesting is recently numbers just came out and you see total revenue increased by 86% year over year and 43% quarter on quarter. What the main idea is that they have actually recovered all the way back to pre-COVID times already and beyond, right? So their gross merchant value, that means all the tickets that they're processing, whether it's in hotels or air tickets, it's already gone above pre-COVID times, right? So in other words, suggesting that Chinese people are traveling internally, and that whole effect is bringing up the local tourism market, and it's also at the same time bringing this company along with it because they are one of the biggest. They essentially own the whole supply chain. For every one of you that don't know, I'm sure you know WeChat, you know Alibaba, but actually a lot of these guys like WeChat, when they sell whatever, like hotels or ferry tickets or train tickets, they're actually selling from Trip.com, right? So if you didn't know, right? So one of the platform, Trip.com, they have this thing called cross-platform sales, and it is a conscious thing, right? It's like how PayPal, there was a period of time they were only focused on themselves. They didn't allow other people to use their ecosystem. And then they decided to take a pivot and work with Uber, work with Facebook, work with everyone else, so that wherever you're using, they're white labeled, they're all using PayPal's infrastructure, right? So for Trip.com, it's also the same situation. Whichever platform you're buying from, a lot of them will link back to Trip.com's supply chain, right? And with that, they have a very serious business in inventory management, like travel inventory management, because essentially all these guys are selling through them, right? Whether it's it amusement park, trains, hotels, air tickets, they're all selling through them. So they have created and they spun out additional business, which is travel inventory management, and it's growing 150% year on year. So I think it's an interesting company riding on China's growth back into quote unquote normal life. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's a good area to look into, right? And given the fact that you mentioned, number one, they're back to pre-COVID times, actually surpassed pre-COVID times. Really talked about even during our chat today, you talked about all of the cases are rising. People are still going out. People are still traveling. We've got yourself, which is already traveling in a couple of days,
Bye guys.
and
I'm
happy,
done. I'm
happy,
done.
happy to
I'm done.
leave Singapore. And you're not the only one in that basket, right? Everyone has been effectively saving up to travel.
Yeah,
And
and
as soon as there is
you're
that opportunity,
suggesting something there, right? Are you next?
maybe,
Yeah.
yes, right. And I guess the rest of the world is not like Singapore, right? Because if you live in Australia, for example, and you're not in the lockdown states, you can still travel to a different location. So Singapore is a little nuanced in that sense. But in Europe, if you notice, everyone is traveling, and even if it's a high incidence area like the UK, people are still going from UK to Germany, and they just make it work. We see that in the US as well as it continues to go on. China is happening as well, with the vaccination rates quite high. So I think it's a good area to look into. It's a good stock to look into now, given the growth as well as these sort of partnerships that you were talking about,
Mm,
specifically on Trip.com, right? Because they have different angles. They have a B2B angle, they have a B2C angle, they have a B2B2C angle, from
mm.
what I understand. And those
Yep.
are
Yep.
great. Those are great. One goes down, it's all right, man. I've got the other two.
Yep. Yep. Great company.
And they're exactly, yeah, definitely. CS, anything to add there?
Yeah, so I mean, number one, I love using Skyscanner when I'm in Southeast Asia. So
Exactly. I use
to know it's
Skyscanner everywhere I go. Yep.
yeah.
We do
So to
use
know
Skyscanner. Yes.
to know that it's from Trip.com, like that's a win for sure, right? I do think that with any sort of like travel or like what do you call them, like leisure type of companies that have been impacted by COVID, I do think there is going to be some sort of permanent write-off for a lot of these companies, right? And I guess, and this is like pretty much like there's going like within every single subset of population, there's going to be a percentage of people who are not going to be comfortable doing what they were doing pre-COVID, right? Even though they're fully vaccinated, or like, hey, I don't want to risk it. I want to stay at home all the time, right? Like, case in point, like my girlfriend, like she's not comfortable going out even though she's fully vaccinated, so she doesn't go to restaurants. She refuses to do that, right? And even with my parents, right? Like fully vaccinated, but they also decided, no, rather not go visit my sister in Europe and all that, right? So I do think there is going to be a percentage of the population that's just not going to be open to travel for a very long time, which I think, Reggie, when you talked about Camping World a few sessions ago, I was like companies like that benefit from that as well, right? But yeah, so I do think I'm very interested in seeing how it plays out over the long term. But for me personally, I won't be getting into any travel stocks or anything like that anytime soon.
Yeah, interesting. I want to add to that if you recognize how big China is a market, and I'm not using it as a as a blanket term. Everyone says, "Oh, China is a big market." The reality is there are a lot of people in China, and the travel infrastructure is very developed. Right, so if you've been there, the high speed rail is like, you get there, it's super fast, right? There are a lot of airports around. Just imagine Singaporeans, right? There's a new MRT station. People go to the MRT station and see what's around there, right? So that is the same idea, with China spending and leading the kind of investment to build trains into places where nobody goes to build airports into places that nobody goes to. But you're seeing the kind of growth in regional travel and domestic travel. So I would say that actually a lot of Chinese, they do spend a lot of money abroad, and now that they can't really travel, or they don't really want to travel because China is relatively safe compared to everyone else, or at least in their narrative and their perspective is relatively safe, they are traveling internally, right? So it's definitely a great time for a lot of these companies and all that jazz, right? So, but I'm not going to go into a geek out situation with Trip.com. Welcome anyone that wants to do a geek out with me. hello@financialcoconut.com. Just email in, and then we could kind of work through that. Yeah, but I also want to take this opportunity to kind of open up our brains a little bit. If you think about it, a lot of people are avoiding some of these leisure companies or like hotel companies and what have you, right? But hotels are an interesting companies because a lot of the hotels are just giving brands, right? They are selling brands, they're selling management, they don't actually own the physical buildings, right? So if you think about it, who will recover the quickest? Actually, a lot of these big branded hotels will probably recover faster than a lot of these like quirky weird hotels out there, or like independent hotels, because they have a whole ecosystem. So I do think that a lot of these hotels will see an uptick in management contracts. They will see more and more rooms under them. You will see more branded hotels going around, right? Especially from the big brands. But at least that's my thesis, my very very shallow random thought of the week, right? So yeah, that's for travel. Nice.
Nice, guys. We are running short of time. Do you think we have time for one more, or should we end it here?
Up to you, man. You're the host.
That's true.
It's true.
Yeah, I think we'll end it here. We're supposed to do it about 8:45, about 45 minutes or so. We're a little over. I think as a quick shout out, right? If you would like to do any geek out, please let us know. I think Reggie mentioned hello at the Financial Coconut. Thanks again for tuning in, guys. Last week we were a little down, a little sick. Don't worry, it wasn't COVID. It was flu related though, I think. But we're back. And next week we promise to have all our tech settled. So thanks again. Follow us on YouTube, Facebook, Twitter, Twitch, Instagram. Right? Any more social medias I should talk about?
Join our Telegram, right? Come in and
Telegram,
ask
exactly.
questions.
So join,
Yes.
join our
Like the
Telegram
Geek Out
group.
Telegram is so quiet. Like you guys gotta lead it, man. You gotta ask questions. I'm not gonna go there and like give you more content. It has to be an interactive situation, right? So come to our Telegram group, TFC Stock Geek Out, to ask questions, drop your theses and all that jazz. But yes, I want to double down on Rakesh's closing. Email to us, hello@thefinancialcoconut.com. We are trying to look for more personalities, more hosts, also more experts, more independent analysts that want to geek out and want to share their perspectives on different companies. So yes, cool stuff.
Awesome. Thanks for listening, guys, and looking forward to next week. Have a good
All
weekend.
right.
Take
See you.
care.